very much. Now, I do want to correct one thing I said. I said, welcome to our lawn. It's not our lawn. It's not my lawn. It's Kelly Porter's lawn. So where did Kelly go sit? Oh, hi. There he is way in the back. Let's thank Kelly for donating his lovely estate. Thank you for being such a gracious host. Now, I do want to make an announcement. Some of you are aware of this news, and some of you probably are not. But our delightful and hardworking CEO, Chris Gill, has resigned. And why did he do that? He did that because he and his wife had decided to travel around the world and do projects for the good of society. And he's described all kinds of amazing things, like saving coral reefs, working with elephants, helping youth in Eastern Europe, and the list just goes on and on. So we want to wish Chris all the best in this new and exciting and completely different endeavor, and thank him for his service to SVForum. Stand up. Where are you, Chris? Oh, come. He's walking down the path. Now, of course, that left us with a bit of a hole at the head of the organization, and many of you will remember Susan Lucas-Conwell, who was our previous CEO, and it was an unbelievably amazing thing, but she was between things this summer and has stepped in to get us through this transition period as our interim CEO. So Susan, thank you. And now we'll have the part of the program you were actually all here for. We have some visionaries to honor. And as in past years, we will have individuals chosen by the visionaries come up to introduce them personally because they have a personal connection. So first of all, we have Jim Hornthal. Jim, please.
Thank you. Hi, good evening or good afternoon. So I'm not going to take any of my few precious minutes to recite Steve's LinkedIn profile or waste your time going other bits and bytes that you can easily find online. After all, someone with an eponymous website, www.steveblank.com, is not short on providing the public with filtered stories about his entrepreneurial success, his military prowess, his public service, or his ability to create amazing time-lapse videos of his daughters from birth to college that make women melt and men angry. No, tonight Steve is being recognized as a visionary. So to help set the stage, I want to tell a very few brief stories to give you an insight into why this recognition is so well deserved. I want to show you a brief glimpse of the Steve Blank you may not know. Steve as jiu-jitsu master, Steve as fence painter, and Steve as the leader of a revolution. My first story, to give you a glimpse of Steve as jiu-jitsu master, is also answering the question many of you are asking, which is, why am I here now introducing Steve? It's a really good question, and frankly, one I'm asking myself right now. And the reason I chose jiu-jitsu is it represents the manipulation of an opponent's force against himself, rather than confronting with your own force. That's a critical part of Steve's modus operandi. In fact, Steve has an uncanny ability to create an advantage from small, almost imperceptible moves of others to make a dent in the universe that's to his liking. You see, when I heard about Steve getting this award, I sent a simple email, because it was only by invitation, asking if I might be allowed to come. So I sent Natalie an email. Natalie is a member of Steve Blank's teaching team at Haas and the National Science Foundation. I'd love to be present as Steve is recognized later this month. Thank you, Jim. Natalie responded, hello, Jim. We'd be happy to offer you a 25% discount using a special super secret code. And if you'd like to receive a comp pass, you need to request this via Steve, who can email us. Should you require any additional assistance, please let me know. Now, of course, when you hear comp pass, you have to ask. So I send Steve an email. Steve, mazel tov. How cool is this? Second point, I'm planning to come and happy to pay, but since they mentioned that you might have juice for a comp, I thought I'd ask. To which Steve replies a very simple Steve Blank response. Be careful what you ask for. See the next email. 2 seconds later, there's an email to Chris. Chris, I just found out Jim Hornthal, my co-instructor, will be in town, and Jim will be introducing me. So let him know what you want. He'll be my guest for the evening. Thank you, Steve. So what did I learn? I learned you have to be very careful what you ask for with Steve, because remember, he is a jiu-jitsu master. This is a skill he further refined. Steve is fence painter par excellence. Steve has an uncanny ability to enlist other people in his crusade to remake entrepreneurship education, or what he's fond of calling e-school. It's a big job, and he's become adept at recruiting others to help paint his fence. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means innovating beyond a flipped classroom, which was a brilliant creation that last year's honoree Sal Khan was recognized for. But Steve wasn't content to just have a flipped classroom. He added two more innovations. The first is a teaching team, and it's made up primarily of other entrepreneurs and early stage investors. And second, he inverts the lecture hall. So the teaching team sits at the back. So now instead of one teaching many from the front, it's a weekly review of peer-led discoveries, moderated, cajoled, and exhorted from the rear of the room by a team of experienced entrepreneurs and investors led by Steve. Now, if you've never seen a lean launchpad class in person, picture in your mind Shark Tank meets American Idol. It works. And if Steve is Tom Sawyer, then I'm proud to count myself as one of his many Huck Finns, because it's one hell of a fence that he's created. And all this from a man who was thrown out of Michigan State and the University of Michigan. You see, it took a severe case of ADD to force him into a successful career in the military, which then led to a stint in the spook business at ESL, which is known as the father of national reconnaissance. So just think of it as the prism of yesteryear. And then this led to a string of startups, one major hit, several singles, a few mandatory craters, each failure contributing to the layer of scar tissue and experience, forging the restless innovator that you see today. Steve's curiosity led him to understand his prior accomplishments and failures as he tried to decode the innovation genome in his first book on the topic, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. But something was missing. So Steve kept looking to find this entrepreneurial API, the pieces of the puzzle that wouldn't only make sense to him, but to others, and be a resonant chord in the valley. So Steve's fond of saying the definition of a startup is a temporary organization designed to discover a repeatable, scalable business model. And that's what Steve's done. With the business of discovering how to discover a business model. They say if you teach a man to fish, what if you teach teachers how to teach men and women how to fish? Now that's a really big idea, and that's a revolution that Steve is the leader of. The lean startup revolution has begun in earnest. If you want proof, you have to look to the National Science Foundation, who's adopted Steve's teachings and a methodology through the I-Corps program. And if you're still curious and skeptical, go look at the cover of the current Harvard Business Review, and it's got Steve's manifesto gracing its cover. So what does Steve expect for his teams? More than humanly imaginable. When Steve says, get out of the building, he means it. We had one team at Berkeley that was doing customer development on cancer therapies, and they barnstormed the chemo unit at UCSF. They were politely asked to leave. They came back again and conducted a few more interviews. They were asked to please leave again. When they came to the class and explained that the security guards had to force them out of the building and told them to never come back, Steve led a standing ovation by the teaching team for the CanScan team. Why a standing ovation? A, they weren't arrested. B, very importantly, no one died. But C, they learned so much from the interviews. Relentless, ambitious, and fearless, Steve is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur and a true revolutionary. I think the methodology that he's helped discover will live far beyond any one technological innovation and represents the building blocks of successful entrepreneurship, a way to systematically go from innovation to commercialization and to help startups fail less. It's the beginning of an era when we begin to decode the true genome of innovation and entrepreneurship. So sit back and reflect on the sublime beauty and hilarity of the moment. I know Steve and Allison are doing that right now. To be honoring a man from such humble beginnings who's transformed himself into the most recent career as a professional who today holds faculty credentials from Stanford, Columbia, Berkeley, Caltech, and I'm sure by the end of tonight there'll be a few more people clamoring to take this Thomas Edison of entrepreneurship education and call them their own. I'm proud to present someone I call my friend, Steve Blank.
So I can't top that, right? It's better than the webpage. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to keep it very short because there's nothing left to say. But, you know, the Valley really has two pieces of its culture that all of you kind of contribute to. One is this pay it forward culture, where we kind of are obligated socially to help the younger generations understand what it is that we learned painfully and hard-won and hard-earned. And I think all of us here are part of that. And that, to me, and actually started with Bill Draper, who's sitting here in the corner. This is very different than almost any other culture. In any other place, what you know becomes kind of coin in the realm, but here we share it. And I was a recipient of that for multiple generations of mentors in Silicon Valley. The second is when I get foreign visitors coming out to ask me about Silicon Valley, the first question I ask them is, we have a special word for a failed entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. Do you know what it is? And they look at each other and I go, the special word for failed entrepreneur in Silicon Valley is called experienced. And that's an integral part of the culture. I'll just close with telling you just a brief story. I lived that as my second to last startup. It was a video game company. I actually got out of my comfort zone and did a company where I actually hated my customers. That's don't do that. It's a bad idea. But I was still good at what my core skill was, is we managed to get press regardless of how much I didn't like my customers. And I found myself on the cover of Wired magazine, and with my team. And 90 days after being on the cover, I realized the company was going down the tubes. And pretty soon after it did, I blew $35 million of venture capital money. And I called up my mother, who was a Russian immigrant, and I said, "Mom, I lost $35 million. And since that wasn't her first language, there was always a pause. Yeah. Then she said, "Oh, so where'd you put it?" I said, "No, Mom, it's like I spent it." And then she broke into Russian and Polish and said, "The country we came from is no longer there, where there's no place for us to go." And then she thought a little bit and said, "And our name is blank. We can't even change it." And why the Valley is great is that my next startup, I returned several multiples of 2 funds and managed to retire and see my kids, understanding that, while 8 startups was a great journey, my best days were ahead of me, and I had no idea what they are, and I still don't. But what a great adventure to be in Silicon Valley. So thanks to all of you.
And now we have Salim Ismail to introduce his friend, Peter Diamandis.
Thank you. So I've been here in Silicon Valley for about 7 or 8 years. And I came across Peter 5 or 6 years ago as Singularity University was just launching. Now, Peter has a rather interesting and colorful background, for those of you who don't know him. When he was at Harvard, he got an MD, PhD, and they gave him his degree only on the condition that he didn't actually practice medicine, right? So that tells you some sense of the wackiness. There was some level of mistrust in what he was going to do in an operating room or in an examination room. He got his MD, PhD because he wanted to go into space, and it's one of the vectors in how you do that. And applied to NASA and found that the astronaut training program and preparation was way too crazy for anybody with the discipline or lack thereof that Peter has. And so he decided, well, the heck with that. And he started something on the MIT campus called the International Space University, and launched an entirely new university on the campus of MIT. It's now based in Strasbourg, France, and it's become the go-to vector for, if you want to become an astronaut, you have to have done your time and gone through a summer program at the International Space University. It's the executive MBA of space programs, and pretty much the heads of most of the space agencies around the world are graduates. And so Peter, in a response to not being able to get into NASA, which was one dream of his, said, let me get everybody else into space and somehow I'll get dragged there. In the course of this, Peter has created about 15 or 16 different companies, anything from deep space rocket exploration, deep space exploration. You're familiar with the X Prize out for Arkid, is it? That is trying to do mining of asteroids using his company Interplanetary Resources. And he's caught on. There's a fantastic clip of him, which is worth finding, on the Daily Show, where he's asked the question, what do you think of planet mining on asteroids? He says, all my life I've wanted to mine an asteroid. And Jon Stewart said, really? I don't remember having that dream when I was a kid. But there you go. That's Peter, right? So he launches ISU. Off that goes, and in the course of that, he launches the X Prize Foundation, which is committed to giving large public innovation, delivering innovation in failed market environments, and honoring the idea of giving large public prizes wherever innovation is stuck. And he did the first SpaceX prize, as many of you remember, about 10 years ago. And he went up, and Peter has this fantastic approach of super credibility. If you launch something and you don't have the credibility, then it's never going to fail. It's going to just tank. If you have something and it's really credible, people will watch it and say, maybe it'll succeed, maybe it won't, and they'll watch you really carefully. But if you launch it above the line of super credibility, nobody ever questions whether it's going to be a success or not, and then it succeeds. And so in launching the X Prize Foundation, he said, I'm going to announce a $10 million prize for anybody who can go into space twice within 2 weeks using a suborbital vehicle. Lined up the head of the FAA, 15 astronauts behind him on stage, and announced this at the Space Center in St. Louis, which was the birthplace of Charles Lindbergh. And so now he's got this incredible aura. Nobody asked, does he have the $10 million? Okay? He lost a couple of board members over it. They were a little freaked out. And then he figured, you know what? Once the prize starts getting close, people will figure that out and they'll come and actually give me the money, right? That didn't happen. And in a testament to his execution skills, he actually did get the money within the last whisker of time to be able to do that, and was able to deliver the prize money as promised, which would have been a rather bit of an embarrassment. And I think there's two attributes that I think are what Silicon Valley is all about, that I think Peter has deep, deep down in his DNA, and God knows where it comes from. The first is the ability and celebration of taking risk. And we've heard that from all of the others, but really the ability to step into this complete unknown, knowing almost that there's a 99.9% failure, and say, the hell with it, I'm going there anyway. And I think that that ability to do that is one key attribute. And as we travel around the world trying to figure out how to expand the teaching of where technology is going, we're finding that risk tolerance is so low. And one of the key, I think, hallmarks for Silicon Valley is that. The second is just sheer execution. Nothing, and I think all of us will agree with this idea, that it doesn't matter how great the idea is, if you're not executing it day in, day out in every single way, in every single facet, it will fail. And for the ones that are executing against it day in, day out, 24/7, there's no way it's not going to succeed, or some variation of it will not succeed. Whether you do a pivot or whatever the fancy word of the day is, it will succeed. Something magical will happen out of that. So I enter the picture 5 years ago. Now, 10 years ago or so, I was living in Europe, and I spent 10 years restructuring large European companies, mostly French ones, which is why I'm bald. And I think those of you who've experienced French European companies will appreciate that. And I tried to incorporate a company to do a startup in France. And they said, look, it'll take you 8 months just to do the incorporation, right? And so that was that. I was out of there. Arrived in New York as a good first stop, built a couple of companies there. Didn't really work out. Trying to raise venture capital in New York 10 years ago was actually quite a challenging thing. Moved out to the Valley, and I was running Yahoo's incubator called the Brick House. So I did that for a couple of years, and I set up a relationship between Yahoo and NASA. And I started learning this ecosystem, this environment where people are thriving, taking risk, paying it forward, executing nonstop. I set up a relationship between Yahoo and NASA to do kind of cool projects together. And one day the NASA people said, hey, there's the founding conference of the Singularity University. Would you like to come along? I've never heard of Ray Kurzweil, who you'll hear from shortly. I've never heard of Peter. I've never heard of the Singularity, never heard of X Prize. Walk in totally blank. I asked a few too many questions about how are they going to manage all this. And Peter says, that's it. Why don't you come on board and help us run it? He said, how much time do you have to spare? And I said, well, I think I've got a day and a half a week. I'm doing 2 other startups. And he says, look, there's a board meeting tomorrow. Can you be on it? And I said, okay. Next morning on the board call, he says, look, Salim's graciously agreed to be the executive director. He's going to spend 50% of his time for the first few months, and then it'll go to 100% once he's gotten rid of his other startups. And I'm learning now about the jujitsu, which he must have learned from Steve about this, another hallmark of these entrepreneurs, and off we go. So over the last few years, we've been building out this organization, and this kind of execution is really, really something. You know when Peter's got off a plane because 18 emails suddenly appear in your inbox, right? All of a sudden, whack. And he's been cramming out emails all through the plane flight. He hits send when he arrives, and boom, you get 18 emails. And what's unique to Peter, which I've not come across in any other leader in this way, I'll look at this email inbox, this flood of these emails, and go, oh heck, okay. I start processing them, but halfway through, my mobile will ring. And it'll be Peter online saying, what happened to the other 9? And it's that insanity, that complete focus and dedication on getting things done that I think is one of the most critical attributes of success. And frankly, one of the most critical attributes of Silicon Valley itself. And we've had the normal ups and downs. There were several times in the course of this, building out this organization, where it's come that close. And it's been execution every single time that saved the day. So with that, I'd like to just welcome and honor Peter Diamandis, more of a risk taker and an executor than pretty much anyone I've ever met, and now a very, very dear friend. Peter.
So what you guys don't know is that about 6 hours ago, I invited Salim to come up with me. I said, I'm flying up. I've got an extra seat on my plane. Do you want to come up? And he said, sure. And got here, and Bob Richards, a dear friend who was supposed to introduce me, slipped on his calendar. And I said, Salim, like 30 minutes ago, would you introduce me? So that was pretty damn good for spontaneous. But I do have to explain the medical school story. So you see, both my parents were immigrants from a small island in Greece and came over. My dad was a doctor and was always expected to become an astronaut. I always expected to become a doctor. And I grew up in the Star Trek, drinking all the Tang I could have, watching Apollo, and always dreaming about going to go into space. And I remember telling my mom, I want to be an astronaut. She goes, nice, son, that's nice, but you're going to be a doctor. So I went to medical school, and in my third year of medical school, I had 2 startups. I had a rocket company. We were building a small launcher, and I had this international space university. And I remember buying one of those first Motorola brick phones, and I would be in surgery, holding, basically holding back the whatever part of the abdomen, and we'd end, and I'd run out to call and say, how was the rocket firing test? And I would work the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift at the emergency room, sleep till noon, and then go work at the office from noon till 10. And that was the normal thing because I was driven by my passion. And I remember this meeting when the dean calls me in, and he goes, so your interns or residents are telling me you're either a drug dealer on the phone all the time, or do you want to practice medicine? And I fessed up. I said, no, I'm doing these startups. He goes, okay. Do you want to graduate? And I said, yes, more than anything else. Make my mom happy. I need to graduate. And he goes, I'll make you a deal. You can graduate as long as you don't practice. And he kept his end of the bargain, and I kept mine. So that's the honest truth. So I'm honored to be here, and I thank the board and all those. I am someone who is living a dream. I'm living my dream, and that's what I think the hallmark of today is, that any dream can come true. We're living during the most explosive time of potential of human history, a time where the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest market opportunities, where technology is enabling 2 guys or gals in a garage to literally transform and disrupt an entire industry, where what we teach at Singularity University is that you have the power to impact 1 billion people positively. And if you get that, what we call a 10 to the 9th plus impact focus, why would you want to do anything else? Why would you want to do anything else? So I had the honor of writing a book recently called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. My good friend Neil Jacobstein gave me the name Abundance, and Ray gave me the subtitle of Your World is much better than you think. And I believe that. I believe that we're heading towards a world where we're going to be able to meet the needs of every man, woman, and child on this planet in the next 30 years, and that's an extraordinary time to be alive. I also think that during this next 20 to 30 years, we are entering a transformative period for humanity, one in which we are leaving this planet and one which we're becoming a multiplanetary species, that thousands of years from now, millions of years from now, whatever we are, however we are as a humanity, we'll look back at these next few decades as the moment in time where the human race moved off this planet irreversibly. And that's a magical time. It's only happened once before when we moved out of the oceans onto land. So I'm driven by that desire to make humanity a multiplanetary species, by the desire through the purview I have through Singularity University. I had the honor to co-found with Ray and with our first leader, Salim, and the work I do at X Prize, to believe that there is no problem on this planet that cannot be solved, period, bar none. The right application of capital, technology, and passion can slay any problem that we have. And if you believe that, if you know that, then we are empowered to transform this planet and make it extraordinary. That's who I am, that's what I believe in, and it is an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now you all have something to go home and dream about. Now I want to introduce my good friend Ann Winblad, who will introduce her good friend Padma Warrior.
Hi, everybody. What a beautiful evening. It's hard to give just a few words to describe Padma. Actually, if you do Google searches on her, she has the most compressed biography of any of the people on the stage. So after tonight, I'm going to rewrite her Wikipedia entry and expand it. So you'll learn a lot more about her tonight. But what you will learn is, first of all, I'm extremely jealous of her name. I've always been wanted to be called Warrior. Imagine what it's like going into a meeting with her where they say, you're going to meet with Ms. Warrior. But Padma describes herself exactly as she is. In a recent interview, someone asked her to describe herself, and she simply said, I love technology, art, photography, theater, and dance. I write haiku, sketch in charcoal, some graphite, and paint with watercolors. I sculpt when I can. I knit here and there. I enjoy interior decor. I understand that she has a new home and she'll be working on that over the 4th of July. I like to cook. I enjoy food and wine. I care deeply about women's empowerment, literacy, and children's wellness. My family and friends mean the world to me. So besides a woman who is extremely accomplished, this is one of the most authentic visionaries that we've ever honored. Padma was born and raised in India. She went to the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi and graduated in 1982. She holds a master's in chemical engineering from Cornell University. Luckily, she came to Cornell and we kept her, and serves as an advisor to both these schools. She joined Motorola in 1984 and was one of the few women in their Arizona facility. She spent 23 years at Motorola, so where we were all working on mobility as this year's theme, she was working on it 23 years ago. In fact, during this period, she was a profound proponent of seamless mobility. What a concept. The concept of having seamless communication across all facets of a person's life. She joined Cisco in 2007 as the Chief Technology Officer. It was a small job. Also as Senior Vice President of Engineering, there were 20,000 engineers. And I bet you there were 19,999 men. Just had to stick that in there. She's been responsible for core switching, collaboration, cloud computing, data center virtualization, security, architectures for business transformation. And today she's Cisco's Chief Technology and Strategy Officer. And she's in charge with steering a very large ship. In fact, she's in charge of turning a very large ship, which she is doing very successfully. In the last 15 months, she's done 15 acquisitions. When Cisco CEO John Chambers was asked this April who might succeed him in the next 2 years as the chief of the $47 billion revenue Cisco, he said, Warrior is among the sharpest technology persons in the world, and she could indeed be the next leader of this organization. We're not sure where she's going to put this award. I know everybody that's a visionary tonight has a lot of awards. I could start citing awards she's gotten from magazines that are now out of business. But we'll start with a few of them. In 2001, she was one of the 6 women nationwide selected to receive the Women Elevating Science and Technology Award from Working Woman magazine. She was conferred with this Distinguished Alumni Award by the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. During her tenure as the CTO of Motorola, she was awarded the 2004 National Medal of Technology by President George Bush. In 2012, Forbes named her one of the world's 100 most powerful women. Business Insider called her one of the 25 most influential women in wireless. The list goes on. And the Wall Street Journal has called her one of the top 50 people to watch. In 2007, she was also awarded an honorary doctorate by New York University's Polytechnic University. In addition to the small job she has at Cisco, she serves on government initiatives. She's frequently at the Aspen Institute, helping us shape the future with our world's great thinkers. She received the United States Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce Excellence Award and the YMCA Metropolitan Chicago's Outstanding Women of Achievement Award. She's also not shy. You probably don't know that she has 1.4 million Twitter followers. And this is probably the result of her sincerity and authenticity. She is a self-trained artist and does work in oil and canvas. And she's also often inspired by her world travelers, probably not last night's trip from Fort Lauderdale. And recently did a series called Dancers, in which she captured the dance styles and costumes from around the world. Now, not only does she paint, but she's a haiku poet, as I mentioned. So just this past Pi Day, she posted a haiku to Twitter to celebrate a day of mathematics. Only Padma would do that. You may wonder how she manages to fit this all in. She doesn't need to read Lean In 5 times to understand this. How she managed to close 15 acquisitions in 15 months. She claims she spends Saturdays technology free. It's her detox day. We'll have to ask her husband if this is true later. And she spends that time totally with her family and friends and pursuing her artistic endeavors. It's really a great honor to give her this award tonight. It is great to find a woman who is a true warrior of innovation for all of us, and who is one of the most sincere and authentic people in all of Silicon Valley. Padma.
Thank you, Anne, and it's a great pleasure to be here. As Anne mentioned, I try to do many things. I'm not sure how good I am at any of those. I started my journey in technology. I'm an engineer by training from India. I grew up in a very small town in India, and I actually wanted to be an astronomer when I was growing up, and I had very bad asthma and actually had to stay away from school for a couple of years because I was so sick all the time. So I think I kind of realized very young that I couldn't do that. So I started meddling with things and decided I wanted to do engineering. So when I was finishing up high school, I told my parents that I wanted to study engineering, and my dad was really thrilled. And he said, if you're going to do that, then you have to go to the best engineering school, which in India happens to be the IIT. It's very tough to get into. And my mom looked at me and said, why do you want to do engineering? You're so good at art. I was always painting and doing things that I like to do now. So I said, no, because I like to build things and know how things work. She said, yeah, but you should be an interior designer. So I said, why? She says, but you can then change drapes. And our home was very small. It wasn't like this home. Maybe if it had a home like this, I would have decided my career would be changing drapes all day long. But instead, I convinced her that I really loved engineering, and then she supported me, and I went to IIT. And when I joined IIT, there were only 5 women in a class of about 250 students. So it was a very, very small community, and we stuck together. And I think that early experience taught me that it's very important, especially in tech and engineering, for women to support each other and help each other and sponsor each other. And to this day, I take time out of my day to do that. I mentor a lot of women and give back to a community. In fact, my team from Cisco, some of the members are here, they keep telling me, I'm not going to say yes to every women's speaking engagement because they have to take care of everything. But it's actually somewhat easy to be a visionary. I think the hard part is to execute. And I have to say the teams that I work with, Rob, he's here from my team. He's very instrumental in closing a lot of the acquisitions that we just did. My team that's back there, they all help me to execute and make the vision a reality. And I feel a big part of being a visionary is actually to build a great team and hire people that can turn that vision into something that's concrete. And so that's part of what I do. I have 3 passions in life: technology, encouraging more women to do engineering, and art and poetry. And the third one is still emerging. It's an emerging technology. I'm teaching myself new mediums to work with. I used to sculpt, and unfortunately, I don't have time to sculpt anymore because sculpture is not something you can start and stop. You kind of have to do it before the clay dries. So I picked up painting. I teach myself. YouTube is my teacher. I watch all kinds of videos on online and teach myself how to paint. And I truly believe that there is no such thing as balance, because everybody asks me that all the time. Because to me, balance means somehow you have to be a perfectionist and divide the time you have into equal chunks for your work and your family. And there is no such thing. I believe in something that I call integration, which is your work, your family, yourself, and your community. And for me, the way I recharge my creativity and I'm able to think about the future is by doing things that are non-engineering, like painting and other things. And so I try to blend those things. I also love to cook. Someday I hope to host an event like this at my home that I can cook for you. And that's something that I very much enjoy doing. So it's a great pleasure to be here. From a technology and a future perspective, one of the things I'm really excited about is this next evolution of the internet. As Anne pointed out, I grew up in the mobile, in a company that was creating a mobile technology. When I was at Motorola, we created the cell phone. And when the cell phone was first being built, I was an engineer working on the technology for it. We envisioned it to be a device that a business person would use, because who else in their right mind would want to carry something that they would call their office for or call anyone for, right? Only a business person would do that. And this year we have about 5 billion users around the world that use this device called the smart device that we all have. And then came the internet, of course, that touched all our lives, and those two are blending now, and we have the mobile internet. And this next evolution, we think, will be all about machine-to-machine communications and sensors and wearable computing. So compute itself will take different forms, and we call that the Internet of Everything. And one of the research that we did at Cisco says that only about 1% of the world is connected today, and 99% of things that could be connected are not yet connected, and they'll come online very soon in the next decade or so. So imagine all the possibilities of what would happen when 99% of the world wakes up. We call that the Internet of Everything, and that's what I'm working on. And in addition to doing some of the other things that I do. I've been in the tech industry 29 years. Actually, my husband is here. We both started in engineering, started our careers together at Motorola. We just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary 2 days ago. I got married when I was 10 years old. I don't know about him. Child marriage was legal in India back then. So it's a great honor to be in the Valley and continue to move technology forward. I think what we do here in the Valley touches many parts of the world. And as a young girl and a young immigrant that came to the United States with $100 and a one-way ticket, I would never have dreamed to be doing what I do today. And that's what the Valley allows people like girls like me growing up in other parts of the world to have their dreams come true. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
Now you'll see a family resemblance. I'd like to bring up, and very happy to do it, Ethan Kurzweil to introduce his father, Ray.
So where do I start? 34 years ago, give you a lot of material to work with. And so you guys can see him, I can't. Does he look nervous right now? He's smiling. He doesn't, okay. All right, well, that's good. So I was actually thinking about how do I do this? How to introduce my father to you and congratulate him on this award. And I thought, like any good intro, maybe I'll just start by telling the story of when we first met. So I was racking my brain for that story, May 2nd, 1979, and unfortunately I can't remember a thing. We didn't have a way of backing up our minds back then. I'm going to get to that, so remember that. And my memory of the 70s is a little hazy anyway. So or maybe it's just that he didn't make a good first impression. I mean, did he? Nobody really usually says that about Ray Kurzweil, but I can't remember our initial meeting. And so I think there was a lesson in there about the singularity when I first came out, but again, all this is a little hazy. So I thought I'd move on to my next plan for this introduction, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what I've learned from my father, from Ray Kurzweil, growing up, and I've narrowed it down into sort of three basic lessons that have helped me in my career and helped me in my life as a result of my dad's orientation to the world. And the first, and those of you that know him will resonate with this right away, is that he's an eternal optimist. And related to that, he just does not take no for an answer on anything. I mean, I remember car rides, hearing about the latest invention that sounded crazy, and then sounded crazy 2 years later, and then sounded crazy 2 years after that, and then eventually he'd make it work and saying to me, this is going to happen, this is the way the world's going to happen. And he just would not take no for an answer and would push through. And in the process, he's predicted lots of things that when he made these predictions, it sounded crazy at the time. He's talked about, and a lot of folks have thought, that computers would never read books, would never recognize the spoken word, would never be able to play chess and beat anyone, let alone the world chess champion at the game, would never be able to answer questions on Jeopardy, would never be able to control our bodies, would never be able to read our thoughts and memories. Maybe then I'd have some memories of my birth a little better that I could have shared with you. And no one thinks that, lots of people are skeptical that technology will have the potential eventually to keep us healthy from within. And these are all things he's predicted, many of which have already played out, and the rest of which I have no doubt we're well on our way to seeing in the near future ahead. So that's sort of the first lesson that I've taken from him. And the second is that the world is changing faster than you think. I think one of the things that my father's recognized early on in his career, and that's enabled him to apply his orientation towards inventing and towards technology, is to realize that most people think in linear terms and that the world is actually moving a lot faster than that. And that really the technology that we use today, the technology that we're building today, creates the tools that we're going to build future technology on. It's a very powerful concept, but not very intuitive to many people. And I think perhaps better than anyone else, he's articulated that. And for me personally, as a venture capitalist, that's been profoundly important in thinking through what's the particular importance of a particular invention, what's coming, what are the enabling technologies that'll come in the future, and using that as a context for being able to evaluate technological progress has been incredibly profound in thinking about where we're headed in the future. And then the third thing that I'll ascribe to my father, and that has helped me, is that geeks like the people in this room here, or this nice outdoor patio here, are going to rule the world. And not only that, they're going to make the world a better place in the process of doing that. And growing up in New England, as I did, I wasn't sure of that except for what my father was saying. I thought, I don't know, maybe doctors rule the world, maybe lawyers rule the world, accountants, maybe, I don't know. But this was something that the power of technology, that he always believed, the power of technology will make the world a better place. And whenever he hears, and whenever I hear people criticize technology as being a divide between people that have and have not, he's always pointed out that eventually technology improves the human condition for everyone, and that he's been part of making that a reality, but also in helping us evolved to the point where everyone accepts that to be unquestionably true, that technology is a good thing and is forwarding the human condition and giving us progress. And I think that's unquestionably the case, and it's something that he's taught me. So that leads me to the one thing maybe I'll take some credit for, if I could, while I have your attention. I moved back out here in 2008 to join Bessemer Venture Partners, as many of you know. And a lot of people think my father joining Google was about the tremendous opportunity at Google and all of that. And okay, maybe that's a small unrelated factor. But he just saw how much fun I was having out here and said, well, you know what? I've taught him some things. Maybe this is him talking. I've taught my son some things. Maybe I'll learn from him and come out here where all the fun is and be able to take advantage of some of that myself. And so he recently, as a lot of you know, joined Google as their director of engineering. In order to be out here in Silicon Valley with his son. And there he's applying his lifelong work in pattern recognition and artificial intelligence to Google's mission, which is, as you know, to organize all the world's information. And for me, I have no doubt that over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see search become a lot more human-like in its uses and applications as a result of his work. And so I'm really looking forward to that future, and I think it's really only fitting and an honor for me to introduce the person in my life that's made me aware that that potential was coming, and that's my father, Ray Kurzweil. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Ethan. It's funny, though. I remember that meeting very well, actually. And they say that newborns can't smile, but I could swear that you looked around and said, wow, this is so cool. And you've always had a very optimistic orientation. I feel that optimism is not an idle speculation about the future. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's one of the meanings of the metaphor of Silicon Valley. I travel around the world, and everybody keeps telling me, oh, our neighborhood is the Silicon Valley of Dublin, and it's the Silicon Valley of Israel, the Silicon Valley of Shanghai, and it has become a metaphor. This is the Silicon Valley of the world. It's a very powerful idea, and it's a special honor, therefore, for me to get this recognition here. Let me reminisce just a bit. I started my first major company in 1974. One report said that the total amount of high-tech venture capital deals in 1974 in the United States was $10 million. There's a bit of a problem with that figure in that nobody actually understood what venture capital was. Like, venture capital? What's that? And it was not a well-known concept. But there really wasn't much money to go around. And that was an era where you actually needed money. I remember we wanted to buy a computer for $100,000. That's when $100,000 was a lot of money. This computer is about 10,000 times less powerful than your cell phone today, but it was important to us. And I mean, $100,000, that's 1% of all the high-tech venture capital deals in the United States that year. Today, you really don't absolutely need money. Maybe when you've actually proven your idea and you want to bring it to a world market, venture capital will be important, but you can get your idea off the ground with the tools you have in your pocket. Not too long ago, a couple of kids in a dorm had this idea. Well, actually, it was a bit of bravado. We can reverse the direction of every link on the web with our notebook computer. With your notebook computer, you're going to reverse every link on the web? Yeah, we can do it. And they did it, and they created a search engine based on that idea, and it became very popular on the floor of their dorm at Stanford. It spread from there. They now have 1 billion users, and I work for them now. It's actually my first job. I thought I'd squeeze in a real job before I turned 65. But that's really the power of an idea. They did it with actually no money at all. Facebook was started with $19,000 and a few notebook computers. You have kids today. There's a 14-year-old who recently won the Intel Science Talent Search, who created an effective early test, non-invasive test for pancreatic cancer, which could actually revolutionize that disease. A kid in Africa with a smartphone has the tools to revolutionize the world. And there's three meanings to me of this, what has really become a metaphor of Silicon Valley. One is the power of an idea, and that's actually an idea that I learned from my parents and my family, and that we've tried to pass down to Ethan. The value of passion, that passion really trumps any obstacle you might encounter. And finally, the acceptance of failure. That's a tough one for some traditions, some cultures, but actually this idea of accepting failure, that failure really means experience, has really spread around the world. It's not, when you start a venture, it's not like a college course where you could get an F at the end of the semester. You're the only one that can give yourself an F. You declare your own failure. Persistence ultimately wins out. And as for the accusation of my being an optimist, I do think I'll admit to being true, although I actually do worry about the downsides of technology. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you can really envision with passion some idea in the future, it's real in your mind, and ultimately reality catches up. Thank you very much.
Well, I think you'll all agree that we selected these four individuals because they've been visionaries and are visionaries and will continue to be. And I formally invite you all to come next year and join us for our next set. And I do want to say that along that theme, we have some previous honorees here. I won't say past visionaries, as Anne reminds me. They're still visionaries and will continue to be visionaries, but I spotted Esther and Bill and Heidi. I saw Pramod earlier. I know we have several more. So would our previous honorees and continuing visionaries please stand and take a bow? Please.